The Longevity Lounge is proudly brought to you by AIA Australia, dedicated to helping Australians live healthier, longer, better lives.
Today we have Dean Gladstone, a renowned lifeguard and reality star, best known by his nickname Dino from the popular Australian documentary series Bondi Rescue. Now, Dean's not just a lifeguard, but he's also a qualified practicing personal trainer, yoga teacher and holistic health coach. He's a former national gold medalist in swimming and surf lifesaving. And post-retirement, Dean has been sharing his experience through his work as a breathwork facilitator, certified ice bath instructor and performance coach. Dean, welcome to the lounge.
Gents, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mate, we've known each other a fair while, haven't we? Right back through from the competitive days of swimming and the surf.
Well, I grew up. You were my hero, Leach, here, watching you back in the day.
Yeah, I love it when a guest comes on and says that in front of you. I really do.
I was too young to really see you ever.
Not even scripted either. There's been no money changed hands in this setup.
So, Dean, you obviously come from a very competitive background, swimming, and as you say, Leachy was the people that you looked at who have done a good job of that.
Well, the sport was massive back then. Leachy would have told you, I bet.
Yes,
but
that's right.
Uncle Toby's Ironman, it was huge. When I was a kid in the late 80s, early 90s, like when the Uncle Toby's was on, it was this exciting on a Sunday afternoon. You'd go home and watch it. And it's unfortunate the sort of way that the sport went because guys were a household name. I actually raced with Leachy a couple of years back at Bondi, and we had a Bondi lifeguard sort of celebrity team.
We had like a veterans versus the boys,
and we actually won as well. I'll throw that in there. I had a very good swim.
You carried him,
but we were we weren't the legends, but people were there to see Trevor and Leachy and Guy Andrews, and these guys are all people remember these guys. The sport was much bigger back then.
Yeah,
you possibly are a bigger name overseas than me, mate. with Bondi, with the Bondi Lifeguards and the Bondi Rescue Show. And isn't it funny how life works, how you've come from a swimming background and you pushed and pushed and pushed, and we'll get into breath work in a sec. But that whole Bondi Rescue thing and just the fact of, you guys went and filmed over in Bali and just huge.
Yeah, well, the swimming led me to my career as a lifeguard. I'm really grateful for that. And, we'll delve into the breathwork stuff and potentially may have contributed to some of my learning difficulties or they've all just jumbled in together. And it's quite an interesting story, and I'm really grateful for what's happened. And, I wouldn't be here today. And I just touched on, I worked with Bronte Campbell and she's just made her 4th Olympics, and that was a huge moment for me this week personally. I was very excited, and it's taken me a couple of years to have the confidence to work with athletes like Bronte. So
there you go. But let's go back to because I've actually worked with you on the breathing stuff, and you touched on Bronte Campbell. You worked with her with breathing and breath work to swim faster. What got you into being so knowledgeable on breathing?
Yeah, it's a long story. I've had a couple of health journeys over the years. In 2005, I was king hit and had my 4 front teeth knocked out. So one of these guys is fake, and there's some horrible photos online. If people, I've got a blog on my website about what happened.
Well, what did happen? How did that take place?
I was at the football having a beer. Looking that way, guy ran up and king hit me.
What for?
I didn't see it. It's a long story.
Yeah.
He was known to me.
Okay.
It's not like he asked me to, step outside or anything. He just ran up and king hit me. I didn't see it.
Right.
So, it was quite unnecessary. He got charged by the police. But, it was a defining moment of my life.
Sure.
I ended up with post-traumatic stress, anxiety. I used to scratch myself till I bled at night with these dermatitis.
Really?
I had these allergies, all these things that I'd never experienced. And to be honest, I thought some of them were bullshit.
Yeah.
As a 24 or 25-year-old man, I used to read stories in the paper about people slipping over in supermarkets and them suing the supermarket because they couldn't get erections. And I'm like, what is this world? People are full of it. And then it happened to me, and I wasn't comfortable going outside.
Yeah.
I'd sit in a restaurant with my back to a wall, and I couldn't drink alcohol. My life completely changed.
Is that what steered you towards thinking beyond some of the competitive aspects of your life?
Yeah, it was nervous system regulation for me that really, truly sort of put everything together. I found a holistic health coach named Darren McKenzie, And we started to look at the bigger picture. I bounced around from doctor to doctor, and it was, the dentists and doctors were fantastic initially, x-raying me and putting my teeth back together. And for the fake tooth that I've got, they did a really nice job. But in a long-term,
not the mental trauma that caused it. They're
the
not going to fix that, are they?
sense, the psychologist I just didn't gel with. And I actually now know when you talk about something, and if you haven't healed that trauma, and it's potentially releasing stress hormones in my body right now. But if you're not ready to cope with that and deal with that, sitting with a psychologist talking about your assault, you're chemically releasing those same stress hormones that happened in the assault. You're essentially reliving that. So these people are just, as I'm struggling to heal, they're just pushing me back through the worst moment of my whole entire life and making me they're crippling me. So
and you don't know that at the time,
I didn't
right?
know that
You
at the
think
time.
you're being helped, but
I
it's-
was just like
Yeah,
locked
you
up,
know
not
something's not
breathing
right.
properly. Doctors are giving me sleeping medication and anti-anxiety medication, and I'm just hating it all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, I realised quite quickly that modern medical system is fantastic in one sense, treating me initially, but in a longer-term sense of health and wellness, it wasn't for me at all. And from working as a lifeguard on the beach, I found when I got a headache, I was generally dehydrated, not lacking Panadol. So that's the sort of direction I took in my life, and breathing has become a big part of that with working with people.
Well, I think we should probably direct the conversation to that, really. I'm sorry to hear that happened to you.
Well, as I said, it's been a defining moment in my life, and I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without that moment. So I'm grateful for everything that's happened to me.
It's a shame that we sometimes have to go through such a traumatic incident to gain that awareness. And so it's nice that you're in a position now to share that wisdom and that learning for people so they don't have to sort of go through that themselves.
Yeah, well, people's stress responses are quite personal and quite, for some people, something quite we might perceive as something quite minor. What they're going through could be, potentially life-threatening for them. Like the suicide rates in Australia every year are horrible. I think something like 8 or 9 men sort of delve into darkness every day. So we've got to address mental health broadly. I'm very lucky to do that.
And you'd have a good knowledge of that, having come from where you've come from, and just that period, you'd understand what other people are going through
And
based on
as
your
a
own
lifeguard,
circumstances.
I've seen that on the other end. I've pulled bodies out of the water. So and brought people back to life after going through that. So podcast took a turn into darkness, but we do want to take the positive preventative moments out of that into helping people
It's interesting.
with health.
I was just thinking, we've had a few guests on, and we're all about longevity and living long and living well, and what are the ways to do that. And that gratitude piece is so interesting, because Dino doesn't know some of the other guests we've had on, but that perspective of when negativity hits your world and the fact you can turn that around and take a positive and be grateful for some bloke knocking your teeth out, because what it's done is it's taken you on a journey in another direction that's defined your life, right?
Now, I must say it took me a while to find some gratitude for it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. This is 20 years on we're talking now.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I've fully
But
come
the
around.
the common denominator is that the experts, the people who have had on the lounge, have all talked about gratitude and how they've reframed in their head life and looking at in a positive way.
Yeah, you see it with athletes as well. Like I remember Mick Fanning ripping his hammy off the bone years ago, and they thought his career was over. He'd come back and won 3 world titles, did he?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
like
won
it's-
3. Yeah, and then fought the shark and got back in the water at Jeffreys Bay in South Africa the year after, and went, you know what, mate, I'm just going to be able to have to go in and just handle this thing.
Yeah. So Mick trained with a Czech coach who I also trained with a Czech coach, and that's when Czech coaches look at the way people breathe. And amongst a whole range of other things.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about, because I've gone through the courses that you've done and followed, and for me personally, breathing was something that you probably took for granted as an athlete. In the pool swimming, you obviously were out of breath when you're going hard, and you do things in training like hypoxic breathing, which was where you'd hold your breath and do a certain amount of strokes and then take a breath, and that would be a way of actually getting better at working through oxygen in your body and getting fitter and not having to take as many breaths during a swimming race. But that was the extent of it. And then I met up with you again, and it was a whole bigger world out there with breathing.
Yeah, basically Leachy was doing some of the stuff that we teach and didn't fully understand the benefits of what he was doing. Although he was getting them, he was practicing some of the stuff that I teach and not fully understanding the deeper science of it.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? So the premise of, I know you're one of the leading breathwork coaches in Australia, if not the world. What is it that the listeners can take from that? So why did you set it up? What's the journey been like? What do you hear people say as a result of being part of your course?
Yeah, well, I guess breathing's easily overlooked. People are just missing it for some reason. Doctors seem maybe keen to medicate people. Whatever it is, people are missing looking at breathing. And so how do we create energy? Through breath, with oxygen. We're breathing properly. If we're breathing properly, we're creating energy properly. If we're not breathing properly, we're not creating energy properly. Breathing's linked to our stress response. You're not breathing properly, you're not sleeping properly. Breathing, cognitive performance, physical performance. Breathing affects everything. So if you want to improve your performance, you can improve your breathing and that will help. Now, there's a whole range of other stuff too, but for some reason, breathing hasn't got the attention it deserves. And I was an asthmatic as a kid. So, similar to Leachy, did swimming, did hypoxic, was always aware of my breathing. But when I started doing yoga, the regulated nasal breathing from yoga was giving me this fitness that I used to get from swimming. And I was blown away.
It's the interesting thing is that you're born and take a breath. And the last thing you do is, the breath before you pass on from this world. But like you said, it's something that you just don't think about. You take for granted that you just do. But if you don't do it properly, like if you're a dysfunctional breather, it can just change your whole health and your whole outlook on your life. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, it's maybe 20,000 breaths a day. So it's dysfunctional breathing. It's sneaky. It can take months or years to show up in people, and it's slight, and it just builds up progressively.
And what is dysfunctional breathing?
Well, it's really hard to. There's no machine that can clearly tell us someone's breathing dysfunctionally. So there's a couple of dimensions of breathing, and I know you know this, Leachy, but we'll go over it. One of them that we look at is the diaphragm. The diaphragm is our breathing muscle. So if you're not breathing diaphragmatically, you're not breathing functionally. You're at greater risk of injury. And then you're breathing with your upper chest and your accessory muscle. So this can lead to sore back or sore neck and even digestive issues, sexual health and function, blood flow to extremities. Yeah, everything, you name it, again, comes back to or is affected by the way we breathe. Every system and organ in the body.
And that breathing through the chest, where you're breathing shorter and quicker, then affects the nervous system as well.
Yeah, well,
so it's
people
not just,
can do it. If you're as long as you're in a safe spot, breath in through the mouth, you feel it like up here and up here. And as soon as you take a breath in through the nose, it's lower in the body. So nasal breathing, quite simply, just down-regulates our nervous system.
Yeah.
And it just takes the pressure off.
And so why do people come to you? I know we talked about Bronte Campbell and Olympians and high-performing athletes. I'm sure a lot of people come to you that are just the average person that want to have a better life.
Yeah, it's interesting because, Leachy and I maybe think breathing is mainstream. In the last couple of years, I've worked with the Sydney Kings, or last year, Sydney Kings. I worked with the Manly Rugby League Club. I was out with the great GWS Giants this week. So I'm working with, the professional athletes, but I'm not seeing as many people as I potentially feel that I could be helping on a one-to-one basis. And it's, I do think breathing's mainstream. We're hearing about it. We're talking about it. We're doing it. There's all the science. People are loving Andrew Huberman and all that
Peter
sort of thing. Yeah,
brings it up.
But it's, I'm actually not seeing the people on the one-to-one level or anywhere near the number that I thought that I could be.
Is that because people, like an athlete, sees it as a 1 or 2%er that they get as an advantage when you're at that competitive high level of sport, as opposed to just, people have enough trouble just getting up and having the motivation to go and do a bit of exercise maybe, or eat better foods, and they just, it's that mindset.
Yeah, it's funny working in the holistic health world. There's a lot of people that potentially don't want to pay for their health, but will pay for, TV, shoes, new stuff. But they won't seem to invest in healthy food sometimes. And a breathing coach, and especially at the moment, right? There's a lot of stress and challenges in the world.
Yeah.
Last couple of years have been quite challenging for people, so it's a luxury.
This program is proudly brought to you by Ascend Performance Collagen Protein. Ascend Performance Collagen Protein uses the highest quality ingredients, is dairy-free and tastes great. Each serve contains 25 grams of protein and includes Tenderfort for joint and ligament support, as well as Gut Matrix to help support a healthy and diverse gut microbiome using a unique combination of pre, pro, and postbiotic ingredients. To find out more or purchase, go to ascendperformance.com.au.
Dean, I've got a question though. So we run a meditation program at my company, the Culture Institute, for executives.
Yeah.
People who are pretty stressed, they've got a lot on their plate, just helping them be present, be still. One of the biggest issues that we run into is that there's no device, there's no toolkit. It's just actually sitting there and doing a breath or anapana meditation or whatever that might be. Do you feel that they need something to pick up or
The
hold?
technology.
Is there something that would
I actually had a
facilitate it?
message this morning from one of my clients, and I had a pulse oximeter on her one day, and because she didn't believe that she was relaxed, so she was getting the feedback from the pulse oximeter, and now when she gets stressed, she visualizes that pulse oximeter and her heart rate under 60 beats per minute. But her doctor and her psychologist, she's from overseas, could not believe, how far she's come and what she's doing. A handful of sessions about me sort of educating her on her nervous system and getting her to feel it. Now, breathing and meditation, there's some interesting crossovers there. I'll personally say breathing is more tangible than meditation, and because you quite often during meditation, and I've done meditation courses, you don't know if you're doing it right. Whereas with the breathing, you can feel it pretty instantly.
I think we can get into a long conversation about that because I come from quite a deep meditation background. The point of even judging whether you're doing it right or not is questionable. So the point of meditation is returning to a home base, which I think the easiest way that we've done this in the past is breathing. The way that it's the gateway or the entryway for most of my clients to get to a meditation is to focus on the point of the breath. And so we all have very active minds. We're thinking in the future or ruminating on the past, but that process of coming back to that breath, I think it's a compound benefit that we get them to be still a little bit, be more present, be aware, be more open to creative thought, but also have the health benefit from focusing on their breath.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I like when I did the breathing course with you and just learned, one of the most powerful breath pieces was the whole sleep piece and just that the data around sleep. And if you're a mouth breather and you snore at night, and just the difference between that and nasal breathing, it's alarming to a point.
Yeah.
Dina, can I take you to just another area of expertise that you focus on, which I think is ice baths?
Yeah, the ice baths have been popular.
Yeah. So you've been doing it obviously for a long time. Love to hear what you feel the benefits are, how easy or hard it is for people to get into it. Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, the ice baths are beautiful with the breathing, because when we teach people to breathe functionally or optimally, you throw them in an ice bath, you're adding stress. It's a controlled stress, so it's fairly safe as long as they, meet the medical, don't have any of the contraindications, and then we can challenge their breathing in that ice bath. That gamifies their breathing a little bit. That's one of the great benefits. It seems in the last 30, 40, 50 years, the problem in society is very different to what our ancestors faced. That they were, potentially couldn't find enough food and freezing at night, and now some people are struggling to pick what food to eat. We're overcome by choice, so we're potentially
In a world of comfort.
Yeah, world of comfort. So that's where breath holding, exercise, cold therapy, hot therapy, these are called hormetic stresses.
Okay.
And so with these stresses, we're looking for the right dose where the body responds positively to. So so if you train too hard, it's no good for the body. Train too often, no good for the body. With cold therapy, with hot therapy, with breath holding as well, we want that right dose response where the body responds positively. So educating people about stress is a huge thing for ice baths, as I see it on a greater picture. And it's short and effective and gets people up and feeling alive.
You get hooked on it, right? It's just, we all love the high, and exercise does it. And, being around good, mates and laughing and having a good time, makes you feel good. But there's no doubt that once you get through that hurt, which because I've taken you down, we go on a Sunday with
It's in the club.
group, in the club, and just the high you get. So I'm interested in your take on this, but my theory on it is that I like doing hot cold and going from one to another, and we warm up first, so the cold's not as drastic when we get in it, but we sort of jump in for 4 or 5 minutes in the steam sauna, which you love.
I don't join you.
Yeah, and then we hit the cold, right? And the first go on the cold's always the worst, I find, and it's a shock. And you get in, maybe do 1 or 2 minutes, then back in the heat, and we sort of rotate that, and we get to, if we can get to 10 minutes or more in accumulated time in the cold, not in one go, but just add it up. Sort of 4 rotations of sort of 2 minutes, 3 minutes, then you're on a high for 3 to 4 hours after it, where you just feel clear in the head. You're on this buzz feeling, and it's sort of like a high from exercise, but more. It's more, and your body just feels awesome. And so that's the thing that hooks you, right?
Yeah, well, you talked about community right then. Like you're getting together with a bunch of mates, you're smiling, you're laughing, you're telling jokes, you're having fun. You're getting that dopamine release from the cold therapy that everyone talks about. But I'm not an expert in the neuroscience and the dopamine. I have seen firsthand over 10,000 people, which I've put through cold therapy, just come out and just feel alive.
Yeah.
But it's a thing, right?
It's a thing. They're addicted to it.
We don't know how much dopamine comes out. We don't know the percentage numbers.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
But what we know is what we know, which is, mate, you feel freaking awesome for a long period of time after it, except for you.
I don't feel great. Look,
Isn't that amazing?
Well, there is a little. Look, I have atrial fibrillation.
Yeah,
so there is a little. There's a study that talks about it can bring on an onset of atrial fibrillation. I generally feel like I do less than you do in those sessions. I obviously don't want to hear the Coolangatta Gold story for the 100th time either. So I don't go in the steam room with
Many do, though. Many
don't. So I
do.
go into my own environment and do a traditional sauna.
Yep.
And then I'll do less cold.
Yeah.
And I get a great benefit from that. But if I'm in the cold for too long, I feel poisoned for the whole day and I'm flat and want to go to sleep.
Is that something you've heard about before, Dino?
Well, again, that's what I talked about earlier, finding that dose response, right? And if he's feeling flat all day, then he's potentially doing too much.
Also,
it's different for different people.
I'm desperate to hear from you. I've read a little bit around 9 to 14 degrees is sort of the optimal temperature. Is that what you believe?
Well, it depends how long. We've got to look at frequency. How many times a week are you going to jump in? Is it every day or is it once a week?
Yeah.
How long?
When you're in?
And then how long then the temperature. So you've got three gauges here that we can look at. I know Dr. Susanna Sobesberg recommends 11 minutes a week, but she doesn't talk about any temperature on that. So
she did her testing going into the water, didn't she? Into the winter ocean.
They're winter swimming.
Yeah.
And being in nature is different to being in a cold plunge. So I took a retreat at Thredbo recently where we climbed Mount Kosciuszko in shorts. Or I saw that. I was facilitating, so I had to keep clothed so I could stay nice and warm with all my wits to keep everyone safe.
Yeah.
Because at the top, one of the persons got to the top and then she started freaking out. And I had to literally dress her. Like she couldn't put her gloves on, do up her shoes. So I'm dressing this person because she got to the top with cozies on and tights and then just lost her ability to move. So this is where it can get potentially dangerous. So anyway, she didn't take into account, had to come back down.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you go up, you got to come down.
So for the beginners that are sort of interested in cold therapy, and there's a lot of, Riggs, I think, is a local one, the Northern Beaches there all over in Australia, that want to go and do cold therapy. Do you have a protocol that you recommend as a beginner?
So brand new people, we just like them to try it, really, just to get in. If you haven't done it before, just get in, aim for 15 to 30 seconds.
Yep.
If you can get 2 minutes, that's fantastic. Try and keep control of your breath. Now, there's the gasping reflex where you get in and there's a potential to go into that stress response and mouth breathe. If it happens, it happens. Try and control it. Come back to a nice soft nasal breath. And again, by breathing slow and through your nose and functionally is a word we used earlier, the body's telling the brain that you're okay. And if you can feel okay in that environment, the pain's going to decrease. You're going to be able to stay in there longer and you're going to get more benefits from it.
So as far as submersion goes, when I first got in, my first go at it, getting in up to the chest was painful. Like the chest was just not fun, and under the arms I found. And then I felt like once I got that done, I didn't want to put my hands under. I was fine with everything. Then I got another week in and I could put my hands under. And then the big kicker was just going and submerging like all under, head under the whole box and dice. I'm assuming when someone does it for the first time, you don't want them to go and dive straight in and head under and all the rest.
Get in nice and slow, yeah. Get in nice and slow, supervised. Hands and feet are usually what hurts the most. There's more nerves in our hands and feet. So yeah, I encourage people to put their hands in, and then when they take them out, it gives them that little bit of pleasure.
Get a break.
Yeah, we quite often sort of are filming people and they're suffering, and we go smile for Instagram, and next minute they go like this, and that's without them knowing, they're tricking themselves into telling themselves they're okay. And we get that little bit longer. There's a magic spot about a minute for some people. They find a sweet spot, and that's supposedly our blood goes to our vital organs and we feel safe and warm.
Okay.
We get a lot of people experiencing that. Some people are like, no. But, it's the placebo effect as well. You've got to want to find that sweet spot if you don't want to find it.
Yeah, if you don't want to be in there, it's a different mindset, isn't it? Yeah.
You got to wonder why people do it in the first place. We live in such a convenient, warm, cozy existence now, to the point earlier about being sport for choice. To put yourself in that situation where you are, always finish on cold, that there's that book and there's this concept of pay money to go and jump into 8 degrees until you're shivering and uncomfortable. There's that rationale or question, why would people do it, and how do we get them to believe in this?
Yeah. It's wild, because when I first started, I trained with Wim Hof in 2018, and we started running these sessions, I think in 2019, and at that stage only football players and athletes were ice bathing.
Tell us about Wim Hof, for those that don't know.
Wim's a wild Dutchman. I think he's mid-60s now, and he was famous for all these party tricks. Basically, I think he's broken 25 world records, and he could influence or control his body to a level that most people can't. And he credited breathing, cold therapy and this meditation mindset to being able to do that. And after doing all these party tricks for years, he challenged scientists to quantify how he was able to do this. So they were able to quantify Wim accessing a deeper part of his nervous system and influence his immune system from the breathing and cold therapy work. So that really put Wim on the map, 2011, and his method really boomed from there. I believe he's partly behind this popularity of ice bathing worldwide.
For sure. He's like he's started the whole thing. Him with those shots jumping into these like lakes and like just ridiculous cold places and doing things. You couldn't help but just be fascinated by what he did.
And then sauna on the back of it has also had a resurgence, I believe, because I always the sauna's always around at surf clubs and all places.
Yeah.
When I was a young bloke, but there's all these like rigs. They got saunas and steam rooms, and people have got infrared saunas at home.
I've got one. Well, I had to through medical reasons. I had a bout of a house that had mold and
again,
it riddled through my body, and my whole body became inflammatory. So I was literally just a walking inflamed,
old and mouldy,
just flame body like your head. And so one of the strategies and the protocols was to get an infrared sauna and try to get rid of that inflammation and not look like your head over a period of time.
So sauna and hot and cold therapy, they simulate like an exercise, like doing exercise for the body without actually doing exercise. So for, Leachy was sick. He can't actually get out there and do his exercise, but he can sit in the sauna.
It just seemed to calm down the inflammation in my body. It took time, but I believe that it helped a lot. And for me personally, like the breath work, I actually bring that into the sauna a couple of times a week when I do that in the evenings, and actually do like a box breathing set or something in the sauna, which is probably, meditation and healing for the body with the infrared going through the extremities.
Multitasking.
One of the things that we ask a lot of our guests on the Longevity Lounge is about their pillars or their rules or their principles that they follow. And if there's a hierarchy or a ranking of those around nutrition or sleep, or obviously breath is first and foremost for you, but do you have an overarching holistic sort of view on the things that people should be keeping in mind?
So if I'm working with people, like I need to talk to them and find out what they're not doing. And what they're not doing, generally, potentially, or what's the low-hanging fruit, what's going to give us the most bang for their buck. You know, are they doing everything right and not getting sunlight and fresh air? And, you know, they might be exercising in a gym and not getting outdoors. You know, can we tweak things and look and get a little bit more value? Yeah, can we tweak when they're eating, how they're eating? And yeah, just it's trying to find that low-hanging fruit for the individual. Because if they're already, some people have come to me and they're doing so much breath work already, they're not doing mobility, they're not doing exercise. It's like, you need to do less breath work, you need to do some postural mobility.
They've thrown all their eggs in one basket and not been
so
balanced.
You've got to have the balance.
What is your balance? So if you had to name whether it's recovery, sleep, nutrition, mental health, where do you position those?
It's all nervous system regulation, right? So if you eat shit food, you're going to feel shit. I guess, it's trying to set yourself up. You know, everything I do, potentially, I take into account how it's going to affect my life.
Yeah.
So it's
awareness.
looking
Awareness,
at the
isn't
picture.
it?
Yeah, it's all nervous system regulation. You know, sometimes breaking my own rules and going out and having fun is a part of that. So not being too attached to it. After I was assaulted, I was on everything had to be organic and everything. I had to cook everything myself.
Were you a hermit as well?
Well, I couldn't eat out and I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel comfortable around people drinking. So I used to buy everything from the organic shop. I was gluten-free, I was sugar-free, I was super clean. But I was so stressed and I was so fearful. If I went out for dinner once, all that stress was actually causing me more damage than good, even though I was eating so clean.
You get to a point where you eat so clean that you're too scared to do anything else and it limits your life.
So it was trying to be relaxed and enjoy my life and then do the stuff I love as well. So you know, when we're on holidays, you know, we're looking at places to eat and exercise and yoga and things we enjoy and balanced lifestyle. But generally for people, there's big bucks for avoiding processed food, gluten, sugar and vegetable oil. They're pretty nasty. A water filter goes a long way. A good water filter, you know, looking at their breathing and their understanding of stress. Chewing your food, there's some simple things there that give people a lot of bang for their buck and they're not doing it.
There's some interesting things here that you've said that are for the every person. You know, I think that's where we need to be mindful that we're talking to elite people all the time on the Longevity Lounge, but our listeners aren't necessarily Australian representatives or gold medalists, or they want to know what can make a difference for them in terms of the everyday. So these things that we've identified here, and we'll talk about this more in the debrief, Leachy, but the little things that you've said about their choices that they make, a water filter, you know, what is it, $15 at Big W, making a big difference.
Yeah, no, good water filter. You're probably looking at
Maybe $50.
It's $1,000 might buy water filter. It's a 4-stage water filter, removes all the chlorine and all the shit the government puts in it and then remineralizes it.
That's not the everyday hack. That's
but I work with everyday people.
Yeah.
And they're spending a lot of money on junk. And if we have a look at their total budget and
replace it
over 10 years, that water filter might be, you know, a couple $100 a year. And when people actually, you know that they've spent money on a good water filter and actually take a stainless steel or a decent bottle round and they drink and they enjoy that filter, they know they're doing something for their health.
Yes.
It's this placebo effect and it's actually some physiological, psychological.
And they start eating a bit better.
Well. They know
exercise.
When they're drinking their water that they've spent money on.
It's like a cube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only is the water heaps better for them, they know they're doing something for themselves. So that it's this multiple things going on with it.
Next time you come on the show, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you feel about Leachy going to the solarium as often as he does. And that brings us to the close of this episode of Longevity Lounge. Thanks for being on the program.
Adios.
Thanks, guys.